The city glowed beneath a steel sky, each tower a beacon of silent ambition. In a penthouse office, a billionaire CEO sat cuffed, wrists raw against polished steel, his face reflected in the midnight glass. Across the room, a young girl no older than 8 stood trembling, wide-eyed and uncertain, her breath ghosting in the cool air. Cameras flashed from the corridor. He could hear the faint echo of shouting, the world's hunger for his downfall. Yet, as he met the child's gaze, a sharp pang of confusion cut through his composure. His mind raced, her face seemed achingly familiar, yet impossible. Tears streaked her cheeks, mirroring the sorrow etched across his own. The voice of an unseen narrator, deep and grave, said, "He built an empire, but he couldn't save her." He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Shame, regret, fear, and some unspoken truth swirled inside him. The handcuffs felt heavier than gold, heavier than the company he ruled. His empire meant nothing as the child's lips quivered. In that silent standoff, the world held its breath. He wondered, desperately, who she was, and who he truly was beneath the mask of power. Outside, the storm battered the city's glass and steel, but inside that penthouse, time seemed to stop. The CEO barely moved, his eyes flickering between the handcuffs and the girl. No words passed between them, only the silent language of fear and heartbreak. The girl's breath came in short, ragged bursts as she clung to the memory of a man she barely recognized. Was he a villain? A father? Or something altogether more complicated? The CEO's mind reeled, searching for an anchor in the storm of his own mistakes. Oh! He remembered flashes, years sacrificed for power, faces blurred by ambition, a life reduced to news headlines and balance sheets. Now, none of it mattered. Only the trembling child before him, fragile and lost. Each second stretched impossibly long, heavy with what was unspoken. He built an empire. But he couldn't save her, the voice repeated in the darkness, echoing through every regret. In the glass, the CEO saw not the titan he once believed himself to be, but a man broken by what he'd lost, by the family he never knew he needed. The hush was shattered only by distant thunder and the electric buzz of cameras outside. The CEO, caught in the unyielding grip of handcuffs, felt years of carefully constructed armor crumble in a single gaze. The girl's eyes, wide and desperate, searched his face for answers he could not give. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice thick and raw, though whether it was meant for her or himself was unclear. Her silence answered more than any words could. The room was heavy with the cost of ambition, the pain of a story untold. She took a small, trembling step forward. He dared not move, fearing the truth would shatter what little hope remained. In that instant, all the power and wealth in the world could not bridge the distance between a child, longing for family, and a man chained by his own choices. Outside, the city raced on, oblivious to the heartbreak unfolding above. In this moment, their worlds collided, past sins and future chances balanced on a knife's edge. The CEO's mind spun with the echo of her silent accusation. He remembered the boardrooms, the deals, the endless parade of victories that left him hollow. Each triumph had carved away something vital, until only this moment remained, raw and unvarnished. The girl's presence was a question he could not answer, a wound he could no longer ignore. "You don't know me," he managed, voice trembling, "but I think I should have." The words fell heavy, swallowed by the sound of rain on glass. The girl flinched, uncertainty written in every line of her small frame. He watched as hope and fear warred in her eyes. Outside, the world pressed closer, eager for scandal, blind to sorrow. Inside, the CEO and the child were left with nothing but the truth, and the storm between them. For the first time, he felt powerless not because of handcuffs, but because of regret. In those final moments before the world crashed through the door, time seemed to fracture. The CEO looked up, a silent plea in his eyes, as the girl hesitated, torn between fear and a flicker of trust. "Please," he whispered, but the storm outside swallowed his voice. The corridor filled with the stomping of feet, the clang of metal, the relentless press of a world hungry for the story's end. Yet for just a breath it was only them, a broken man, a lost child, and a chance neither understood. Lightning flashed, illuminating their silhouettes against the glass. Somewhere in the city below, his empire kept running, blind to the reckoning in this room. He built an empire, but he couldn't save her. The voice intoned again, each word a hammer blow. As the door began to open, everything changed, and nothing would ever be the same. The story's heart beats not in power or prestige, but in wounds left unhealed. A child watches from the shadows, her small frame silhouetted against the dim glow of a cramped apartment. Her mother's voice trembles as she pleads for work in a bustling store, desperation lacing every word. Nearby, the boy clutches a worn-out toy, eyes scanning the faces that ignore him. These moments shape futures, sow fears that grow like wildfire. Somewhere else, a young woman in a sharp business suit turns her back on a boardroom, the weight of rejection pressing down like an iron fist. She's no stranger to sacrifice, the cost of rising too fast or falling too hard. Each character carries a silent promise to never be like those who failed them. Their scars bind them, but also fuel their hunger. This is the true story behind the headlines. Not a CEO, but a child, a mother, a daughter, all entwined in a fragile web of love, loss, and determination. In a sleek corporate tower, a young woman in her late 20s turns away from a polished boardroom table, heels clicking on marble as she retreats from cold, indifferent faces. Her eyes glint with the fire of defiance beneath the weight of exclusion. She has tasted the bitter sting of being overlooked despite her talent. Behind the glass walls, the city rushes by, indifferent to the battles waged inside. Her shoulders tighten, fists clenched in silent resolve. This is not the end of her story, but the painful beginning of a new one. The scars of rejection deepen her resolve, and as the elevator doors close, she carries with her a vow to never be sidelined again. This moment is a crucible, forging a spirit as sharp as any business strategy. Her future will be hers, no matter the cost. A boy sits alone on a worn bench inside a small convenience store, clutching a faded toy car, eyes fixed on the cluttered shelves as his mother pleads with the shopkeeper for work. Her voice trembles with urgency and exhaustion. The harsh fluorescent lights flicker overhead, casting stark shadows on their faces. Outside, the city hums obliviously. The boy's world is small, confined by scarcity and hope. Yet inside, a fierce determination simmers beneath the surface, shaped by moments of neglect and love. This quiet scene reveals the silent sacrifices that power ambition, a reminder that behind every empire is a story of struggle, of promises made in whispered prayers. The child's gaze is steady, harboring dreams yet unspoken, dreams that will one day demand to be heard. The young woman's reflection caught in a rain-streaked window as she steps out of the boardroom building, the city's gray sky mirroring her storm within. Her breath clouds in the cold air, mingling with the drizzle. Alone yet unbroken, she pulls her coat tighter, swallowing years of silent battles. The boardroom's rejection lingers like a shadow, but her gaze turns forward, fierce, unyielding. She remembers the promise she made long ago to be stronger than the forces that tried to break her. Each step down the pavement echoes with the weight of resilience. This moment of solitude is her crucible, where pain transforms into purpose. In the distance, the city pulses with life and opportunity, waiting for her to claim it. The journey is just beginning. Back in the cramped apartment, the girl watches the rain trace patterns on the window, her fingers pressed against the cold glass. Her mother's tired voice drifts from another room, filled with quiet strength and sacrifice. The child clings to the fragile hope woven through hardship, a promise to never repeat the mistakes of the past. Outside, the world's noise is distant, but inside, love and fear dance in the shadows. The child's eyes close for a moment, a silent vow forming in her heart to rise beyond the brokenness she has inherited. This scene is the emotional anchor of the story, revealing the roots of a legacy defined not by power, but by the wounds that shape us all. In the quiet, the seed of tomorrow's empire takes hold. Sleepless nights became his new reality. In a cramped, dimly lit office overlooking the restless city, the CEO pored over blueprints, projections, and endless reports. His face was etched with exhaustion, eyes bloodshot from a relentless chase. Each missed birthday, every lost call, and every abandoned promise weighed heavily on his soul. The empire he built demanded sacrifices he never imagined he would pay. Friends faded into memories, lovers drifted away, and family became a ghost he could no longer avoid. Yet, the drive to succeed pushed him further, even as the cost climbed higher. In the quiet hum of fluorescent lights and clacking keys, ambition battled regret. The CEO's world was shrinking, held captive by his own relentless pursuit of power. He whispered to himself, "It has to be worth it." But deep inside, the cracks were widening, and the price was becoming painfully clear. The calendar marked birthdays missed and anniversaries forgotten. At home, silence swallowed the spaces once filled with laughter and warmth. He scrolled through old photographs on his phone, smiling faces frozen in happier times. Guilt gnawed at him like an unrelenting storm. He remembered the promises made in youthful idealism, now shattered by endless meetings and corporate battles. Loneliness settled like dust in every room he entered. The cost of ambition was no longer just the hours lost, but the relationship sacrificed. Each victory felt hollow, each handshake forced. The man who once dreamed of legacy now feared he was losing himself. Yet, even in the darkest moments, a flicker of hope remained, a desperate wish that the future could still be rewritten, that love might survive the ruins of success. Friends became strangers, their calls unanswered, dinners declined. The CEO's world narrowed into boardrooms and endless negotiations. Lovers once close now existed only in memories and fleeting messages. The loneliness that crept in was suffocating, yet he pushed harder, believing success would fill the void. Each deal closed tightened the chains around his heart. Even in crowded rooms, he felt invisible, isolated by the weight of his own ambition. He longed for connection but feared vulnerability. His empire grew, but so did the emptiness. The man who sought power was becoming a prisoner of it. In quiet moments he questioned the worth of all he'd built, wondering if there was still a way back to the family he lost. Victory came, but it felt like defeat. Boardroom wins meant new enemies and higher stakes. His health began to falter, stress creeping in like a silent predator. Sleepless nights became endless battles with himself. A blurred birthday cake, an unopened gift, reminders of the price he paid. He looked in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. Each achievement brought new challenges, forcing harder decisions. The cost was no longer just time, but his very being. Friends whispered concern, but he brushed it aside. To admit weakness was to invite failure. Still, beneath the armor, a deep weariness settled in. The empire was growing, but the man who built it was fracturing. The sacrifices mounted, the price climbing beyond money or titles. Each lost friend, each forgotten birthday, each broken promise was a debt unpaid. The CEO stood alone on the rooftop of his skyscraper, city lights flickering below like distant stars. Wind tugged at his coat, a reminder that even empires built of steel and glass could bend. He exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of everything he'd lost, and the fragile hope that somewhere in the ruin, redemption might still be possible. His journey was far from over, but the path ahead was steep and uncertain. The cost had risen, but so had the stakes. And as the night wrapped around him, the man behind the empire knew he had to choose what he was willing to lose, and what he would fight to keep. The floor dropped beneath him in a boardroom charged with whispered betrayals and cold stares. The CEO's world shifted with a single revelation. The company he believed was his own was built on a foundation he never controlled. His co-founder, once a trusted ally, was his sibling, a shadow lurking in the background all along. The betrayal sliced deeper than any competitor's attack. His hands trembled as he listened to the quiet confessions and veiled accusations. The truth was a sharp blade that shattered his illusion of power and ownership. The room felt colder, the air thinner. He realized that the empire was never truly his, and the weight of legacy suddenly felt like a crushing yoke. He was left reeling, forced to confront a family he never knew, and a business that was no longer his to command. The revelation was only the beginning. Soon, whispers of embezzlement and deceit surfaced. The mentor he revered was unmasked as a thief, siphoning resources under the guise of guidance. Each fact unraveled the carefully woven story of success, leaving a gaping wound in the company's heart. Trust shattered, alliances crumbled. The CEO's vision blurred as he grasped the depth of the betrayal, a betrayal that threatened not just his empire, but his very identity. Every confident step he had taken was now steeped in doubt. He struggled to hold on, but the foundation beneath him was eroding fast. The business was crumbling, and so was the man who built it. As if fate demanded more, a doctor's grim voice shattered the fragile calm. The CEO learned he was dying, the illness hidden beneath years of stress and silence. The secret gnawed at him as he hid the truth from his team, the company unaware of the ticking clock. Each breath became a reminder of mortality, each meeting a battle to maintain control. The empire he fought for was slipping away, and with it, the chance to mend broken bonds. The weight of impending death pressed down like an unyielding storm, forcing him to face not only the collapse of his legacy, but the fragility of life itself. Time was no longer his ally. It was the enemy closing in fast. The revelation of illness added a desperate urgency to the boardroom. The CEO wrestled with whether to reveal his secret or protect the fragile company from panic. The weight of leadership collided with the fear of mortality. The once unshakable titan was now vulnerable, forced to make impossible decisions in silence. In hushed meetings and private moments, he grappled with the truth that he might not be there to see the empire's fate. Allies became doubters, and trust grew fragile. His body weakened but his mind sharpened, focusing on legacy and the family he had long ignored. This act of concealment was his final gamble, a silent struggle to keep control even as everything threatened to collapse. The collapse was seismic. Rumors and betrayals exploded across headlines. The company's foundation cracked under scrutiny, stock prices plummeted, and board members turned their backs. The CEO stood amid the chaos, a man stripped bare of illusion and power. Yet, even as everything fell apart, a flicker of hope remained, a chance to rebuild, to reconcile, to confront the past. The storm of collapse was brutal, but it was also a moment of truth. As the dust settled, the CEO faced the wreckage of his legacy, and the family he had yet to understand. The empire might be broken, but the story was far from over. The boardroom was silent, every gaze fixed on the CEO as he prepared to face the vote that could dismantle everything. The weight of the moment pressed down like a storm cloud, legacy versus survival, family versus empire. His voice was steady but edged with emotion as he addressed the room, laying bare the truth and pleading for trust. The board members exchanged glances, the tension palpable, each second stretching into eternity. He spoke of sacrifice, of love lost and battles fought, his words cutting through corporate veneer to reveal the man beneath. This was no longer about money or power, it was a reckoning. The CEO's heart pounded as the vote commenced. Every hand raised a testament to fate's merciless judgment. The future hung in balance, fragile and unforgiving. The apology came quietly, not as a grand gesture but as a whispered confession behind closed doors. The CEO sought out the daughter he barely knew, words heavy with regret and hope. "I was blinded by ambition," he said, voice cracking, "but I never stopped wanting you." Her eyes, hardened by years of absence, softened just a fraction, the barrier between them trembling. They shared a moment suspended in time, a silent hug that spoke volumes, a fragile bridge over broken years. The apology was a beginning, not an end, and though the wounds ran deep, there was a flicker of something new. Forgiveness, or at least the courage to try. In this intimate space, amidst the rubble of empire and family, healing took its first breath. His final speech was both a farewell and a battle cry, echoing through the grand hall as staff and shareholders listened, rapt. "This empire was never just mine," he declared, voice strong despite frailty. "It belongs to all who believed, who fought, who dreamed with me." His words wove through memories and hopes, rallying those who remained. Some eyes gleamed with renewed faith, others with doubt, but all felt the weight of the moment. He acknowledged mistakes, embraced vulnerability, and offered a vision for a future rebuilt on truth and sacrifice. This was his last stand, a legacy redefined not by conquest, but by courage. The speech marked a turning point, where endings gave way to new beginnings, and the man behind the empire revealed his soul. A silent hug between father and daughter in a quiet hallway sealed the fragile peace before the storm. Neither spoke, but their embrace conveyed 1,000 unspoken words. Regret, love, hope, and pain intertwined. Outside, the city's relentless pace continued, unaware of the moment's gravity. For a brief heartbeat, family eclipsed empire, and the future seemed a little less uncertain. It was a moment that would echo in memory long after boardroom battles and media frenzy. In that embrace, the CEO found a shard of redemption, and the daughter a glimpse of the father she never truly lost. The world beyond waited, but inside, something precious was reclaimed, a bond stronger than fear and time. As the boardroom doors closed behind him, the CEO felt the weight of what was lost and what might still be saved. The empire teetered on the edge, and the decisions made today would ripple through generations. He stood alone, not as the invincible titan the world once saw, but as a man stripped bare by truth and choice. The climax was not just the survival of a company, but the salvation of a legacy, one forged in sacrifice, pain, and unyielding hope. He knew the path ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, he felt something real, a chance to make things right, to rebuild not just an empire, but a family. The moment was irreversible, massive, and deeply personal, a turning point where everything changed forever. The CEO returned to a world transformed, not just by the collapse and revival of his company, but by what he had become. No longer the untouchable titan, he was a man marked by sacrifice and humility. The office felt quieter, the air lighter yet heavy with reflection. He walked the halls not as a commander, but as a guardian of legacy. His relationships, once fractured, now mended with tentative hope. The daughter, once distant, had stepped closer, bridging years of silence with cautious trust. The company, reborn through struggle, embraced a new chapter defined not by greed, but by values forged in pain. It was a resolution painful yet poetic, where what was lost was mourned, but what remained was treasured. In this quiet victory, the CEO found not wealth or power, but something far deeper, a sense of belonging and purpose renewed. The daughter, once distant and wary, found herself shedding old defenses. She walked the halls of the company with new eyes, seeing not just a business empire, but a family legacy tangled in sacrifice and love. She took steps to reclaim her place, not for power but for healing. Meetings once cold were now infused with possibility and collaboration. She discovered strength in vulnerability and courage in forgiveness. Her journey was no longer about rejection, but about connection. The painful lessons of the past became the foundation for a future that welcomed change. Together, father and daughter navigated a path from fractured to whole, building a legacy that honored both ambition and humanity. The company's revival was not measured in numbers alone, but in the quiet victories of renewed trust. Former rivals became allies, drawn by the new vision rooted in integrity. The CEO's health, though fragile, inspired resilience rather than pity. His presence was a testament to the price paid and the strength gained. Each meeting carried a weight of respect and shared purpose. The legacy they built was no longer a monument to one man's ambition, but a tapestry woven by many hands. It was a story of sacrifice transformed into hope, of wounds healed through honest connection. As the company grew steadier, so too did the bonds that tied family and business together, forging a future where both could thrive. The CEO often found solace in quiet moments away from the bustle, a simple garden on the rooftop where the city's noise faded into soft whispers. Here, surrounded by green leaves and sunlight, he reflected on a life of sacrifice and redemption. The man who once thought he had no family now understood that legacy was about more than wealth or title. It was about love, forgiveness, and the courage to change. Each breath in this peaceful space was a reminder that though the journey had been painful, it had led him home. The garden became a symbol of growth, of roots deepened through hardship and branches reaching toward hope. In this sanctuary, the CEO found peace in the legacy he would leave behind. The legacy was not built on genius alone, but on sacrifice. The CEO's journey had carved deep lines of pain and resilience, teaching that true power lies in the bonds we nurture. His daughter stood beside him now, not just as heir but as partner in a shared future. The company thrived not because of unchecked ambition, but because of lessons learned through loss and love. Their story was a testament to the human spirit's capacity to heal, rebuild, and forgive. In the quiet aftermath, the CEO breathed deep, knowing that what remained was more precious than any empire, a family reclaimed, and a future reborn. This was the final truth of his story. The final chapter opened with quiet reflection in the CEO's study, a room filled with memories and soft shadows. He stood before a mirror, aged yet resolute, his eyes tracing the lines carved by hardship and hope. The city lights glittered behind him, a distant reminder of battles won and lost. Though he had left the company in capable hands, his heart remained tethered to every corner of the empire. A single thought echoed, he left the company, but never left her. The weight of years fell away as he faced his reflection. The man who had once believed power defined him now, understanding that legacy was love and sacrifice. The room was still, save for the faint crackle of fireworks exploding outside, painting the night with bursts of color and silent promises. This moment was a quiet triumph, an end that was also a beginning. Outside the glass tower, the night sky ignited in celebration, fireworks painting the heavens in brilliant hues. The CEO's gaze lifted, absorbing the vibrant spectacle, a silent witness to a journey marked by loss and renewal. The child's hand he once saw now reached for the empty boardroom chair, a symbol of hope passed down. The future shimmered with possibility, fragile but undeniable. As colors exploded overhead, memories mingled with dreams, and the man who had lost so much found peace in what remained. The empire was no longer just bricks and glass, but a story of human connection, of mistakes, forgiveness, and enduring love. Tonight, the past and future danced together in the firelight, a final chorus before the dawn. The child's hand reaching toward the empty chair was more than a gesture. It was a promise. The next generation, unburdened by past mistakes, ready to take up the mantle. The CEO watched from afar, a smile touching his lips, knowing that this legacy was alive and breathing. He understood now that true power was not control but trust, not isolation but connection. In that silent moment, the vast boardroom was transformed from a fortress of ambition into a cradle of hope. The past's weight lightened by the promise of new beginnings. His empire had become a family, imperfect yet unbreakable. And in that promise lay the true victory, one not measured by profits but by love passed down. A silent stare in the mirror carried the weight of all that had come before, and all that was yet to be. The CEO's eyes held a mix of sorrow and resolve, acceptance and hope. Fireworks still painted the night sky, unseen but felt, a celebration of survival and renewal. This was the moment where the man and the empire met in quiet reconciliation. He had lost much but gained something far greater. The scars of the past were no longer burdens but badges of growth. In that mirror, he saw not a titan of industry but a father, a man redeemed by love and sacrifice. The future was uncertain, but for the first time it felt full of possibility. As the final seconds ticked away, the world held its breath. A child's hand on a chair, a father's quiet reflection, fireworks bursting silently in the distance. The story ended not with a bang but a breath, a promise whispered across generations. He left the company, but never left her. These words hung in the air, a testament to a legacy of love, loss, and hope. The journey was complete, yet the story lived on, carried in hearts and memories. In the silence that followed, tears welled, and breaths caught. The empire had fallen and risen, but the family endured. The last frame was a stillness filled with everything, the past's pain, the future's light. And in that moment, all was forgiven, and all was possible.